Welcome to EFT Expert Interviews, where we talk to renowned EFT practitioners on topics that can transform your life. These are live interviews where you can ask questions and get answers from the speaker. I'm your host, Stefan Gonig from EFTalive.com and singletosoulmate.me. So today we are talking to Leyden on the topic of, are you tapping or just tapping around? Learn the Embodying Grace HeartMap with EFT. Dr. Leyden, PhD and MBA, impressive, is an internationally recognized psychotherapist, humanitarian, and trauma healing pioneer. She's the developer of the Embodying Grace HeartMap, an innovative framework that integrates EFT with presence-based trauma healing and spiritual growth. Lori has worked with genocide survivors, school shooting communities, and spiritual seekers worldwide. She's the author of Embodying Grace, Trusting Yourself, Your Life, and Your Divinity, and she's the founder of the nonprofit Create Global Healing. So welcome, Lori. It is so wonderful to have you.
Oh, Stefan, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. So you've got a lot of really impressive things that you've been involved with. Usually I'm interviewing somebody on a single thing, so I can say, how did you get started with that single thing? But in your case, how did you get started with all this stuff that you're doing?
Yes, indeed. Well, it's an easy question to answer because, I did have a troubled, traumatic childhood. And very early on, like in the eighth grade, I started to look for some answers. And I won't go through too much of that detail, but that led me on a course of healing my own trauma. And then once I was able to really make some significant shifts, uh, it then turned into a profession. And, as many of us, I've spent hundreds and thousands of dollars on every therapy known to man, woman, and I like to say extraterrestrial. And I was always in search of what is the more elegant way we can heal. Because at least when I was growing up and through the 20s and 30s and 40s and beyond, uh, it's really the therapeutic focus is on what's wrong with us, what's broken about us. And I really believe that we are whole. It's like the Michelangelo statue. You just have to clear away that which is not you. And so I very much support people in healing from a place of wholeness. And so as a child, I was really connected with genocide. Now, I was an Irish Catholic kid. How did that happen? Well, I read Anne Frank, and then I read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which changed my life completely. Because even as young as 13, the fact that someone who was living in a concentration camp and had everything taken away from them, but could find meaning and purpose. I thought, well, if that's possible in the worst of human circumstances, I want to speak to that. I want to be part of that healing. And so, is it so strange that decades later I would find myself, and this is interesting for you, Stefan. I was actually in search of my spiritual romantic partner at the time. And he had gray hair and blue eyes, and he was 6 feet tall, and he was very spiritual, and I had it all figured out. And then I get an email from someone in Rwanda saying, "Can we translate your book?" At the time was the Stress Management Handbook. Can we translate it into Kinyarwanda? And because I was so connected to the Rwandan genocide, because I was so all the genocides that continue to happen in the world just break my heart. But in any event, I said, yes, you can translate my book. And what else can I do? And they said, well, please come here and teach your stress and trauma skills. And I went, yes. And then I went, how am I going to do that? Newly divorced, in a new city, building a practice, whatever. But my heart leapt. I felt this quickening. And how I prepared myself for Rwanda was exactly how I think we should prepare ourselves for relationships, which is I had to get intimate with myself. I had to, or I chose to, imagine myself in every different circumstance. Could I sit with a man who had murdered 100 people? Could I sit with a woman who was living with AIDS and her family was destroyed in front of her during the genocide? Could I sit with orphan head of households who were children themselves at the time and given 2 to 6 other children to raise? And in that depth of finding, could I find the Hitler in me, the person who might be put into such a circumstance that they would kill someone? And in that inquiry, I healed so much of my own traumas that would have interfered with my work in Rwanda and all of these places. I will pause there because there's so much more to the story. But that got me to Rwanda, which then, I was invited into Sandy Hook and then Parkland. And in between, I was working with Aboriginal and refugee communities in Australia. But it was all about, could I be fully present to this level of darkness and pain? And in that presence, I realized everything I needed in the moment was there, accessed through my heart instead of my head, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense. And it's a captivating like story and mission that you've been on since starting when you were like 13 years old. As you said, there's something about um, genocide and just that whole thing that just really captured your heart, and it's kind of set your whole life direction.
Well, as we were talking earlier, I really have seen over the years of teaching as a spiritual mentor and an EFT practitioner, I have seen that as we heal our traumas, the seeds of our destiny emerge, meaning that our passion comes alive. And my passion was, what did I want most at the most chaotic, difficult time in my life when I was 12 years old? I wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to know that I mattered. I wanted to be rescued out of the situation I was in. And I wanted to have a hopeful future. And then here I am in Rwanda talking to 100 orphan head of households who want the same thing. And then I realized we all want the same thing. And so
Yeah.
it's a gift to me because I feel I enter this resonance field that I call an infinity circuit, where there appears to be a giver and there appears to be a receiver. But when we meet in that sweet spot in the middle, there's only love, and we are all transformed. I'm transformed as a practitioner. Hopefully, my clients are. And oftentimes, I can only work in groups in these environments. So, fine tuning the ability to work with hundreds of traumatized individuals, presence to me is the only way that can truly happen effectively. Uh,
Yeah, no, it sounds amazing. I wish I could have been present for some of those to see what it was like.
mhm. Well, we do have the documentary, which you can see, which is free on my website, which connects my Rwandan kids with the uh, brothers of siblings who were murdered in Sandy Hook. And that was my vision and my dream. Young people, traumatized young people around the world coming together as only they could appreciate in each other for healing and leadership and hopefully economic sustainability also. But when I watched the kids in Sandy Hook and my kids in Rwanda were a little older, in their 20s. But there was a reverence. There was something that happened in that interaction that really transcended my, it blew my heart open. Uh, and I think the more times our hearts are blown open, the more we have that vision to pull us forward.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Um, so that's great. I look forward to seeing your documentary on your website. I assume it's the same website as here under your name, I mean,
Yeah,
under
yeah.
drloryleyden.com. All right. So anybody watching this who's curious about what it was like in Lori's work, and you have a documentary you can go check out. But today, what we're doing is you're talking about, well, you have a fun title. Are you tapping or just tapping around? And the implication is that there's something about how much deeper you can go in healing versus what a lot of people who are first exposed to EFT tend to do. And it
Mhm.
involves learning something you call the Embodying Grace HeartMap. So maybe we can start with you saying, so what is that exactly?
Exactly. And I think we have a couple of slides, but this all started 21 years ago after a near death experience in which I asked meditation for the most elegant form of healing I could bring to the world. And I got a formula. And I'm in the meditation saying, what am I going to do with a formula? And then I asked, "What am I supposed to call this?" And the answer was the grace process. And I said, "I'm not calling it the grace process because that's too religious. People might think it's, more religious than spiritual." And the message was, "Yeah, just go with it." And here I am, 21 years later, uh, uh, and we have this evidence that this formula works. So out of that emerged a framework. And I don't know about you, Stefan, but when I went into my spiritual journey, there wasn't really a map. There wasn't really something that I could look to and say, "Oh, that's what's happening now," or "What is the journey like?" And so the heart map has three functions to it. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're able to put that. Um, that place of grace that I describe as the ego is transcended. I feel this connection to all there is. I feel this sense of presence, and whatever I need comes through in that channel when I put aside my own personality, my own ego. And then something beyond my imagination happens in these sessions. Um, and so that's my spiritual, I call it a heart map. But where EFT comes in, if we can go there, is EFT to me is an accelerator, and can be an accelerator of our spiritual path when it is correctly used. And so I use EFT specifically with those judgments, finding out what's underneath those judgments, finding that aha moment that allows those judgments to slip away, and even in the darkest of communities to open our hearts to the possibility of forgiveness. And then certainly we use EFT when the magic and miracles happen, and I don't mean that in a woo-woo sense. I mean that in a heart coherent place, to tap in those feelings of gratitude, love, joy, and wonder. So, and that has now turned into a certification program that I'm doing. But this Embodying Grace Heart Map is applicable to any and every spiritual exploration. So I know that's a lot.
Well, I think we're going to kind of back up and go back through it again in a different way.
Yes,
It's
yes,
nice to get that overview that kind of we can keep in mind as we discuss everything else.
right. So it begins with the heart brain body connection. And I'm really calling this, I'm calling this presence and physiological regulation as the fifth wave of therapy. And our colleague, Dr. Peter Stapleton, talks about the fourth wave, which is the somatic experience. And because of the vagus nerve discussion, lots of people are talking about this physiological regulation. I believe we are hardwired for our divinity in this way. The Heart Math Institute has been studying the physiology of the heart for 30 years. Um, and I'm sure you know this research, but the first organ to develop in the human fetus is the heart. Now, most people think it's the brain, but that begs the question, which organ is developing the rest of the body? And we believe now that it is the heart, the heart secretes its own hormone that regulates the body, and the heart has its own brain with the same neuronal cells as that in our prefrontal cortex. And so when the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain does to the heart. We also know that there's an electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times greater than the brain. So this is where I have really anchored my understanding of my spiritual path and as an EFT practitioner. When we are in fight flight mode, when we're in survival mode, we are only triggering our reptilian brain, which shuts off the access to our higher human functioning. But when the heart is in coherence, and they're in coherence with the body that's regulated and the prefrontal cortex, now we are activating our divinity, because the prefrontal cortex is the seat of our creative problem solving, our sense of intuition, inner wisdom, our sense of connectedness, and even transcendency. And I feel like when we are regulated in this heart brain body connection, we have access to all of the insights, all of the ahas uh, that are necessary on the path. And when the client, or when I am doing self care, um, when we come up with our own reframes, that experience is powerful enough to transform us. But when,
People may not know what reframe means.
yes, thank you, meaning that sense of aha, that sense of, oh, wow, that's what that is. It's a physiological feeling that allows us to trust. I feel that in my gut, a lot of people
It
will
also
say.
includes seeing a certain situation that we viewed in a certain having certain negative meanings. All of a sudden, the aha is that we're seeing the situation in a whole new way. And
Exactly.
yeah, so it's a dramatic uh, turnaround for us.
Right. And we know that just talking about something does not produce an experience, a physiological experience where you're literally feeling that connectedness that allows that perspective. And of course, well, I keep skipping ahead as if you know all about the heart map, and we're
Well, what
just
I'd like
talking
to
about.
do actually is go back to the beginning. There's a
Yeah,
question that I want to kind of start with because this is kind of going to the experience that I think there's a lot of people are exposed to EFT because they heard about it. They go on YouTube and they say, what's EFT? How does it work? How do you do it? And they start to play with it, and they start out with some nice experiences where they feel better in the moment, and they go, oh, this is cool. It's like, wow, I could do this tapping and I feel better. That's great. But then why is it some tapping feels helpful in the moment in that way, but it doesn't create lasting change?
yeah. Well, hence our topic. Are you
Yeah,
tapping or just tapping around?
right.
The thing that really gets missed, first of all, there's clinical EFT, which is founded in hundreds and hundreds of research articles. Clinical EFT, the research tests the original protocols. That's it. Research does not back the hundreds of different variations there are about tapping. So, as you said, if we don't understand that we're tapping to regulate our physiology, you probably, and I'm so shocked that this is not the absolute number one priority. Because when I reset my physiology through EFT, which is tapping on these acupressure points, that sends a signal to the brain that it's safe in the experience of traumatic memories. Um, and so there are a lot of different forms, and they can be wonderfully palliative in the moment. But I have a little.
People may not know what you mean by palliative in a moment.
Thank you. Um, Meaning that it feels good in the moment, and then the not lasting effects. And so, for example, it's the same thing as your spiritual practices. If you're doing your gratitude journal and you just finished your yoga and you had a 20-minute meditation and you come out of your practice and you kick the cat or yell at your partner, the spiritual practices are not working. And the reason they're not working, the same as EFT, is because your physiology has not been regulated to a shift that could literally give you access, to those higher spiritual and human uh, characteristics that we have. So again, like, and there are certainly great applications. We've got tapping applications. We've got tapping for self-care. Uh, we've got tap and breathe, which I'll talk more about. But if you're not following a specific clinical EFT protocol, you're not really sure which part of the problem you're working with. So, for example, scripts, EFT scripts, there are a lot of them out there. Uh, I believe the scripts are good for one thing, very important thing. Generally, in these scripts, we're tapping on a different part of the problem on every point. This may feel good for 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, but we don't know which one of those parts has been released or healed. And so I think when we use scripts, if you're tapping on all these different aspects or parts of the problem, tune in and figure out which one of those aspects you just tapped on is the most intense. Measure that and start with that one. I don't think this is really, I think it's been very confusing in the market. So, yes, scripts can help you identify your most intense aspect, but only tap on one aspect at a time, meaning one part of the problem. And then just the tap.
If you're gonna make any progress, that's what's needed, is what you're saying.
Right, right.
Right.
And so I know, look, if you're in the moment and you're feeling like you really need some help listening to a tapping script and or listening to a tapping meditation, if that helps you regulate, great. But I'm going to offer something that can help us regulate every day, all day, so that that regulation becomes the norm. So, for example, I had a client who literally tapped all day long, all day long. And bless his heart, he was really committed to his process. But it was more of not an addiction, but it was this obsession that no matter, he could not leave the house because he was tapping on everything. But there wasn't an amount of consciousness. And look, this person had a lot of trauma, and they needed to be tapping with a professional, in my opinion. But the notion that you have to tap, something's not right. If you're tapping and your breathing is not becoming more regulated and you're not feeling more grounded in your body and more safe, this is all about that internal safety. And so, like, tap and breathe is my workhorse. And it seems so simple. And
So
many
most people don't know
people,
what tap and breathe is.
I was just going to explain.
Okay.
Uh, and that is the great thing about tap and breathe is we just take the normal 9 points, which we can go through. I'm not quite sure uh, with your audience, but you simply take a point and you take a full inhale, you pause, you take a full exhale. But most people are not breathing well, as we know. You're not even aware that you're not taking the full inhale or the full exhale. And some people say, well, I get dizzy or I want to fall asleep. But that's because we're not regulating the breath. And as you tap on these acupressure points, you're accelerating your ability to regulate your physiology, which at least brings you present enough to know, how can I responsibly respond to my environment or to what's happening? So it takes 2 minutes to do one round of tap and breathe. Again, you just tap on each of the 9 points and do that full inhale, full exhale. Excuse me. But we measure that breathing 0 to 10. 0 being no contraction, the most expanded breathing I can have, and 10 being so contracted I can hardly breathe. When those numbers start to come down, generally 2 to 3 rounds, which only takes a few minutes, um, we begin to feel safer. We reset the reticular activating system in our brain. We reset the communication in the brain. So I have people tap and breathe every hour for 6 times a day for at least 2 days. And people will say, I don't have time to do that. But you don't have time not to do that if your physiology is dysregulated and you're anxious and you're stressed or you're depressed. Um, you can be more productive, you can be more efficient. You can also, in that time period, ask yourself, where has my mind been? Has it been focused on the negative or is it focused on the healing that I desire? And you cannot, I talk about uh, what do you want more than your grief and your trauma? Because you can't hold your grief and trauma and, not to say it's not important, but and receive the healing that you're desiring. So that heart, brain, body connection is the key. And it's really not that difficult if if you commit to it. However, people who have PTSD and trauma, this requires in the presence of a practitioner to really make sure that the client is safe when they're doing it. Um, do you use tap and breathe, Stefan, with your clients?
I don't, but I was just thinking as I'm listening to you that it may be a nice way to start every session, actually.
Never start a session without the physiology of my client because that's helping manage the process. All I want for my client is for them to feel safe enough in their bodies to come up with their own ahas and their own releases. And so, in that space, if I'm only focused on your physiology, and if I don't focus on physiology, then whatever tool I'm using is not going to be as effective. And here it is, if you say, oh my gosh, the heart really is our connection to the divine. Like, because how else can I meet the divine but in the field of the divine where I'm regulated and I'm open and my heart is open, um, and so I'm partnering with the divine. Most of us, I call EFT body prayer because it quiets the mind enough to pray. So most of us are doing beseeching prayer, you know, and we're making deals. I promise I'll never do that again if you only bring me this miracle right now. No, I'm exaggerating, obviously, to make the point. But we don't really spend a lot of time listening and being present, which is where the ahas come in. And so that to me, I've been talking about this for 20 years, so it always surprises me because I think, other people just know this. This is just, but excuse me. I think you have to have a spiritual foundation when you work in traumatized communities to hold that people, in fact, are capable of healing. Uh, so
I
that's
think I
that
was just
heart. Go ahead.
well, I was just thinking about it when you were talking about when people pray to get help for something in their life. Um, the help, ironically, as if they're in a as sort of an agitated state, seeking help, ironically, they're not in a position to receive the most likely form of that help, which is receiving something from the divine to help guide you in your life. But you have to be in a grounded, centered, open enough place to hear it, to receive it. And
Right.
if you're like, I need help, please help me with this, and you're just all tight, then you know the divine is talking to you, going, well, yes, here, this is something. If you do this, it's going to be really helpful. And then they go like, hello, hello, and then
And then the beautiful
like,
aspect of this for people, because, people who are in that agitated state will say, well, I can't possibly get there. I mean, a beloved just died or something like that. And these are certain crises. We are not, I think one of the myths is we're tapping out the problem, but we're not tapping out the problem. We are tapping to regulate our physiology so that the memories and the experience feel safer in our bodies to even contemplate, because we're running from those issues, the shame, the guilt, the pain. But in EFT, the elegance of it is from this inner safety place. Now, when you think about the issue, what's possible? And that's where the perspective comes in, and that's where the transformation comes in. So that first part of the heart map is critical. And then I think these 5 stages of knowing where we're at. Uh, Years ago, I introduced, and we'll be doing this again soon, the 5 stages of embodied grace in a 4-day online challenge for free. And I thought, nobody's going to want to learn that they're in separation, right? 600 people showed up to learn about separation. And it was like that, the aha moment of, oh my gosh, I did not know what I was suffering from. I just knew it felt awful and disconnected. But now that I know we can call it a stage, I can look at what are the characteristics of that. I can remind myself, oh, am I doing a little self pity here? I was really good at that. A little martyr here. I was very good at that too. and then recognize, oh, I'm feeling disconnected. And then that stirring place of where we're ruminating, those conversations you have with people in your head, you're rehearsing them, um, or we're never going to try something on our own because there's going to be another workshop I have to take or another guru I have to follow, instead of looking at the answers from the inside of me to be able to assess it. Does that feel right to me? So when we can get ourselves out of that separation and stirring, which EFT does beautifully, um, we can move into that place of surrender and stillness where that everything drops away. Any notion that you're even practicing anything, any notion that you're leading the client, it all drops away, and that we just focus on that energy, which is not woo-woo anymore, because we've got a whole institute who's mapping that energetic field. We feel safer, we begin to trust ourselves, and in that trust, the next issue that might come up, we trust more in our physiology. Oh, I'm going to sit my butt down right now and tap and breathe because I'm feeling a little, agitated. But when surrender and stillness begin to feel better than all those stress hormones, now we are truly tuning ourselves in to the divine. And so I love knowing where I may be in those stages, and then the practice of what's your intention. Your intention is going to show up. Opportunities are going to show up all the time to help you apply this formula. What are my judgments right now? What needs forgiveness? We in this country, we are in a bit of chaos, and it's very easy to get passionate, but then passion can turn into agitation and dysregulation, so that we may not really be acting from a response able place. And so it doesn't mean I'm not going to protest peacefully. It doesn't mean I'm not going to speak out on an issue, but I'm going to speak from a place of surrender and stillness. And that energy coming forward is a lot different than when I'm dysregulated. So I've been using these practices for 21 years, using them in the most traumatized of circumstances, uh, using these with Ukrainian government leaders right now. And they are finding, even in 2 weeks, they're realizing, even though we are in the middle of a war, there is a place inside of me that even for a few moments every day, I can return to. And it really is all about remembering that Viktor Frankl thing. Everything can be taken away from you, but they cannot take away your sense of inner safety. And I think that's what we bring. That's the humanitarian service right there, is helping people return to a place of inner safety.
So I think it's super helpful to have those 5 stages, because I think just knowing that there are stages and being able to identify the first stage that we all start in, and recognizing that there's a way to get from stage 1 to stage 2, and from 2 to 3, and 3 to 4, and 4 to 5. That's just even knowing that exists when you first learn about it is comforting. It's like, oh, okay, there's a path I can follow. So I think that's really
Right.
cool. Which kind of leads me to
Right.
my question. You're talking about all this really cool stuff and the clear benefits of doing it with a practitioner, of course. But how can people use this when they're trying to tap on their own for self-care?
Yes. Well, first, tap and breathe. Tap and breathe 6 times a day. Tap and breathe when you're in the car. You can tap your side of your hand on the steering wheel. Don't try it with 2 hands, though, please, when you're driving. But you will get so much out of tap and breathe if you really stick to it and you do those full inhales and full exhales and you measure your breathing. But use the basic EFT protocol with aspects. And aspects, as we talked about, means parts of the problem. Be specific. That is the most, that is kind of probably the widest thing that really needs to be grounded with people. You say to yourself, zero to, so what's the issue? The issue is my husband leaves his socks on the floor. I'm just using a simple one right now. And, and you say, and how do you feel about that right now? Right now, 0 to 10. Oh, you know what? That's a 7 right now. Okay. Well, when you think about all the parts to your husband leaving your socks on the floor, which are the most intense? And if you're not sure right away, you list them. So he never listens. So you do, okay, he never listens, 0 to 10. Two, he doesn't care, uh, 0 to 10. You look at what that is. I went so far as to, uh, the marriage is over. I mean, you can pretty much go far afield on all the parts of the problem. He makes me have to do everything myself. I'm clearly agitated in that space, even though I don't have a husband. Um, and as I figure out which part of that, maybe it's he doesn't care about me. So that's the biggest 0 to 10. That's where I start on that issue. And I do encourage people for self care not to take your worst trauma, but start with these things like socks on the floor first, so that you can begin to see how it works on simple things like the kids didn't take their dishes to the sink, or whatever it is that's upsetting you in the moment. But the basic EFT protocol with aspects is where you're going to get the most effect. And again, one aspect at a time. So I mean, there's a lot of access, I think, but if people want to email me, I will send you the basic EFT protocol with aspects.
Yeah.
And
So,
obviously, the point, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
If you feel like a trauma coming on, you really do some tap and breathe and put that aside and find someone, a professional who can hold space, because you are not meant to work on your own deepest traumas.
That's right. We don't work on our own deepest traumas by
Exactly.
ourselves. Right. EFT experts don't do it. They find somebody else to work with.
Right.
Right. So there's a, capital T trauma, which is defined as a single, overwhelming event. So, that we all have a sense of what that is. And then there's other things that people tend to call a trauma that is not to that degree. So it's not really the right word for it. But if that kind of thing you can potentially address on your own, which you might think of as a small T trauma. But
Hmm.
capital T traumas you do not want to do by yourself.
Right. And capital T and small t are individual. For example, what might be a trauma to me may not be a trauma to someone else. And so we don't, there's the ACEs schedule where you can check on some of your big life issues. Um, but
I
do
don't think people know
appreciate,
what the ACEs schedule is.
yeah, uh, adverse childhood experiences. And then
Okay.
there's stress and trauma checklists if you want to measure what might be a trauma for you. But my point really was more that it is specific to the individual. And so oftentimes we will dismiss our own trauma because we'll say, well, that's like the trauma of when I was stuttering in front of the class when I was in the third grade. That was traumatic to me. It might not be traumatic to somebody else. Uh, so let's not, I'm just saying, don't be too quick to, uh, you know, diminish your experiences.
Sure. Um, so one of the questions you actually gave me to ask you
I
was,
did.
you did. Um, it's like how can you use the heart map specifically to guide you into your own presence, clarity, and self trust for more effective self care tapping?
Uh-huh. Yes. Well, I think it's, I think the formula gives us the answer in that the grace process formula. If you have an intention, my intention is to clear my self-doubt so that I have the ability to be fully present. Well, what are all the judgments you have about yourself? And that's the ego part of the formula. And I guarantee you, if you're not being able to be fully present, it comes up in the form of judgments. The the fear of, like in Newtown, EFT practitioners came in, and I said, "Who's ready to tap with someone whose child was murdered?" And everyone raised their hand. And I said, "Wrong answer. Nobody's ready." I'm like, wait a minute, I have my certification. I have all this. No, because we're going to start with you first, not your credentials, right? And so we set up, mock EFT sessions with each other and looked at all the judgments that we have about ourselves. Can I sit with this mother? And then maybe I feel inadequate, so I have to work on my inadequacy. Maybe I feel like I don't have enough training. But as we list all those things that are contracting us in the moment, as we use EFT to release that, we become more present, right? Those judgments drop away. And then when we move into forgiveness, like for example, my self doubt was probably connected to some core issue from childhood that might require some forgiveness, or, maybe how my parents interfered with my self esteem. There's the avenue of forgiveness, which again in itself is a whole huge. I do not talk to people who are severely traumatized about forgiveness unless they bring it up. But that's really where the EFT and it helps our ability when we're regulated. How do I know I'm present? Because my body is regulated, that my mind is clear, my breathing is full and deep. Uh, I and I don't have all these stories in my head about what I'm addressing or what I'm doing in the moment. So I talk about pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. We suffer when we have a story about what we are experiencing. And the grace process, the heart map, and EFT can help us feel safe in those experiences, to have the trust for those ahas to come through. Did I answer your question? My question?
Yeah, no, I think so. One thing I just want to mention to everybody, feel free to comment during this interview. Make comments, ask questions. This is live. We're here in reality, and this is a chance to ask questions, which we often don't have, right? So we have an expert here was very happy to respond to anything anybody might say. So we really encourage you to do that. And we are going to have a live Q&A at the end, but you don't have to wait till the end. You can do it at any point in the process. Um, so to use your Embodying Grace HeartMap to help somebody do their own self-healing, uh, imagine on your website that there's going to be a kind of a layout of, people are not going to necessarily remember just from this interview
Right,
all the pieces or anything.
right.
Right. So there's going to be something available to help guide them to apply that to themselves in the moment.
I have several ebooks, one of which you'll be giving them the link for, but there are several others you can download from the website. But also my book, Embodying Grace, Trusting Yourself, Your Life, and Your Divinity, is the place where you get all those. You can get, if you say, oh, I can't think of any judgments I have, I've got a list of them that will help prompt you, a list of forgivenesses. And then here's the other piece, I think. Uh, Whenever you're feeling any sense of gratitude, I just ask you to place your hand on your heart, this heart point, which you can either tap or you can simply hold, and breathe in that gratitude and notice how the energy of gratitude can give rise to the energy of love. And just really sit with that, oh, wow. And then there might be a spark of joy that arises. And then that opens us to a place of wonder. And in that place of wonder, everything is possible. In that place of wonder, I'm physiologically regulated. And so even if you can't solve the problem that's bothering you in the moment, do this practice of gratitude, love, joy, and wonder, and then bring your intention into your mind from a regulated place, and then work the steps, right? And the steps are regulate, figure out where you are. You're probably in separation or stirring if you're dysregulated. And then look at tapping away any judgments you have about this thing that you're trying to heal. Uh, Calling in a spiritual romantic partner. What are my list of judgments? I'm too old. I missed out. Uh, I'm not lovable. I'm always in the wrong place, or I'm never in the right place. Um, uh, I'm too much. My life is too unusual, all those things. And then I would sit and ask the question, which of those are the most intense? And then, just go down the list, pedantically go down the list until those judgments have cleared. And, one of the things I think self care practitioners and EFT practitioners get a little lazy, is not a good word, but we'll tap from 0 to 10, we'll tap down to 5 and then go, oh, yeah, I'm good. Boom, I'm out of here. So we don't necessarily have the discipline to take it down to 0 to 2. And then the next time, check in with yourself. Am I still at a 0 to 2 on those socks on the floor? And then proceed with the next issue. Uh, so it sounds pedantic and we want to rush ahead to the next thing, but the more you do that, the more you release the judgments, you're going to be able to see yourself in the other, if the other happens to be your trigger. But the compassion arises, compassion for ourselves and the other person and the circumstance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was thinking that one of the things that I think happens for people who first get exposed to EFT and start to play around with it is they hear it as this, super fast miracle cure. And I've literally had people contact me and say, I tried EFT and it didn't work for me. I said, well, can you give me an example of that? And they said, sure, I tried, I had this problem phrase and then I tapped on it and it didn't work. And I said, well, how many rounds of tapping did you do? And they said, one. And it's like, well, if you do one round of tapping, that's not gonna be enough tapping for anything.
Right.
So there's this sense of this, it's like this magical cure-all that happens real fast. When I think, following the kind of process you're describing, where you realize that you're in separation, that you're probably having lots of self-judgments going on that you may not be aware of until you look into it. And starting there and following this sort of methodical step-by-step process will actually get you to where you hope to go much faster than trying to jump to the end by just going,
Exactly.
even though I have this problem, this problem, this problem, this problem. I have a how to do EFT video, and I had with that teaches the basic EFT recipe, and we all start by saying, come up with a problem phrase, and just use that phrase every point. And we cringe as we teach that because in reality, that's not really what you want to do. So it's way too simple. And the hope with doing, I mean, sometimes it actually works, but the hope is when you come up with a problem phrase that will just lead to bringing out all of these different aspects or parts of the problem, which you'll just sort of naturally end up addressing just because they sort of come up in your awareness while you're tapping on the phrase. But having an organized process like you're describing is the kind of thing that will really get you there if you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
really, heal different parts of your life.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And again, goes back to what is the purpose why are we doing EFT? I don't feel like it's spoken enough that the only reason we're doing is it for a physiological regulation first. And I think we miss that. Uh, Being in these traumatized communities, like, really showed me how critical that is and how important it is. So, you know, I talk to, as we know in the EFT world, the practitioner manages the process, the client manages the content. So I do not offer solutions. I sit in the wonder that if I help this client regulate their physiology and apply this process, they will come to it themselves. And so uh, I've trained hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mental health professionals and EFT practitioners or coaches. And the EFT coaches are great at managing the process. I won't say they're great. It needs some tune up to the back to the basics. But the mental health professionals have a really hard time because they've been trained in cognitive behavioral therapy and they've been trained to offer advice. And I think it's harder for these mental health professionals because EFT makes it, if you are really excellent at the protocols, EFT, you don't have to work that hard. You're just managing the client. And the same thing with self-care. We'll do the same thing in self-care. Oh, I know the answer to socks on the floor after one round. Like, oh yeah, okay, I'm good. Next time I won't get upset about it. Wait a minute. And then the next time it happens, I get upset about it because I have not focused on the most important aspects or gotten them down to 0 to 2 uh, that make
We have a,
it manageable.
we have a question. Um, so this person wrote, will you do a tapping demonstration? And I can actually answer that. And unfortunately, we don't have
Yes.
time. We're that would be wonderful, but we don't have time to do that.
And also
But
be a bit of a disservice as well, because whatever we could do in 5 minutes is not, except for tap and breathe, would not give the appropriate teaching in that
right,
period of time.
yeah, we would need more like 30 minutes to do a good teaching
Thanks for
demonstration.
the question.
Yeah, no, I
Look,
mean, it's a wonderful idea. And I'm sorry that we don't have time for that.
I was just saying, have them look at your video, refer them to your YouTube videos.
Um, yes, well, well, I have my how to do EFT video. I do have a bunch of tapping scripts. Um, but I totally agree with Lori. You know, when a person tries to make one of these tapping scripts, the goal is to try and touch on all possible causes of the problem you're trying to address. So it's kind of a shotgun approach because it's the opposite of what I would do with a client. With a client, they say, okay, you want to work on this issue, well, be with it for a minute just and tell me what comes up, right? What are you getting in touch with about it? And I'm writing things down. And so I'm not saying, well, here's a list of causes, let's tap on all of them. I'm finding out what is your cause, right? What's right for you. But since I'm doing a video for the world, I don't have that opportunity. So all I can do is think of every possible cause and include them in all the points. I try and my tapping script's a little longer than the average ones. The average ones are like anywhere from 5 to 8 minutes, whereas mine are more like 15 to 20 minutes. Because I do try and do what Lori said. I don't just touch on a different aspect at every point. I try and stick with them longer. But even then, it's still the same thing. Lori's suggestion is fantastic. Go through the script and notice as you tap on each phrase that I'm saying or whoever's saying, which one do you have the biggest reaction to? Which one do you feel the most upset, right, or most charged? And so you'll feel like, oh yeah, that one got me. Stop the video, write it down. That's the one I'm going to do. In fact, just stop the video and just stay there, and just keep staying. Move through the points, but stay on that phrase that got you, because that's where you need to release it. That's where you need to let it clear. And you want to stay on it until, like Laurie said, until ideally between a 0 and a 2. When you're down to a 2 or less, practically speaking, you've cleared it well enough. But a 5 is not. 5 just means it's went from high to medium. Medium still means it's causing you problems. And I agree. I remember when I was first learning EFT, just a quick story. I started by practicing on my friends, and they all did the same thing. they would say, what's your original number? It's an 8 or 9. And then we get to like 4 or 5, and they go, okay, that's good. I feel much better now. And since they weren't my client, I didn't feel, that I had the right to say, how about if we keep going and try and get that number down more?
Yeah.
It was a very universal phenomenon. But
Well,
anyway,
and just
go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just emphasizing that when you get down to 0 to 2, that's the activation point. That's why you're getting there, so that you can get that aha or inner wisdom or release.
Right. Because that's when you've cleared the negative energy enough that your system is now available to receive the knowing, whether it's from your own higher self or from divinity or wherever you're getting it from. You're in a place to actually get it. And it is a really cool experience. Anybody who's tapped on something and cleared it out really well, all of a sudden they'll have these ahas, as Laurie says. It's like, oh, I'm seeing the whole thing so differently now. It's like, now I get it. So it's a really wonderful experience, but you have to clear it really well to get there, as Laurie was saying. So unfortunately, this is all we have time for, but we are going to do a live Q&A next. But I'm very aware that not everyone is going to stick around for the live Q&A. So I'd like to cover a couple things just in transition first. First of all, Laurie, how can people find out more about you and the work you do?
Yeah, well, I see right here on the screen that my website URL is there, drlaurileyden.com, DR, in front of Lori Leyden. And there you'll find a number of resources, ebooks to download. You'll learn about this mastering therapeutic presence work, as well as what we're doing in Create Global Healing, which is my nonprofit, where we're supporting Peace Academy in Rwanda. If you can imagine, primary school kids learning EFT and the grace process and bringing it home and learning English, and their parents get to work, and we're literally breeding peace builders from the age of 5 years old. So that's
Wow.
always in my heart. And then you'll see a description of the work that I've brought to various communities around the world. And so, yeah, and our documentary is also on there. It's called When I Was Young, I Said I Would Be Happy.
Oh, cool title.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to seeing that documentary. And you have a free gift that you're offering everybody, and it's called Embodying Grace Through Presence, right?
Yes. And that's a free download specifically for your audience.
And there's a link to that in the description of this video. I have two free gifts myself in there, but you can see it in the description. This is about Laurie. And so I guess now, oh, and one other thing, I'm doing these interviews twice a month, 2 Saturdays a month from now through 2026. I'm gonna be doing it for a couple of years. And I've got interviews already lined up through summer of 2026, and I will keep scheduling beyond that too. If you'd like to get email notifications about these interviews, the very end of the description of this video has a link to sign up to be notified. So there's that. So now, anybody have any questions that you would like to ask Laurie about any of it? Here we go. There's a question. And it says, whoops. Thank you, Stefan, for bringing Laurie's Embodying Grace process and heart map to the EFT and wider communities.
And this is my
Yeah.
beloved colleague and friend, Dawn. Thank you so much. So glad you're here.
Yeah, and you're very welcome, and I am absolutely thrilled to do so. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to Laurie's interview for the last few months. When I signed her up, I was like, oh yes, awesome. It's gonna be good. Okay, here's another one. And it says, hi, Laurie and Stefan. Does Laurie have a tap along YouTube videos where we can tap along with her on these topics of the heart and etc.?
Thank you for the question, Claire. And for the reasons we talked about at the beginning of the interview, I don't do tap along videos because if I don't understand who my audience is, if I don't have a very specific person to work with, um, I'm more into the clinical EFT part of this, so unfortunately, I don't, because it's much more it's much more complex and must be dealt with on an individual basis. But I have Mastering Therapeutic Presence and Embodying Grace 4-day free challenges. I've got some of those coming up soon where you can get a taste of some of these things. So if you do join my email list, you'll have an opportunity to work with me for free as a group in an online thing that is actually teaching you how to apply the heart map.
When is the date of the soonest upcoming one?
You had to ask me that. I think it's December 9th. But if you're on my Facebook page or if you download any of the ebooks, you'll be on my newsletter list, and we'll be sure to let you know
Okay.
when they are. But we will have one by the end of the year.
All right, awesome. Any other questions or comments from anybody? Um, if, by the way, if you have a question, so we're getting really close to the end here, so we're gonna end as soon as it doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So if you're in the process of entering a question that's going to take a while to type the word, just the letter Q, and submit that, so I know that you're typing a question, and so I know to wait for the whole question to be typed. But we have, let's see, a comment from Claire again, and she wrote, "Okay, thank you. I will sign up for your offering." All right,
Great.
awesome. All righty, anybody else? Like I said, type the letter Q to let me know you have a question, or C for comment, or just something, so I know something's coming. So, all right. So so Lori, would you be, if somebody was to ask a question, if somebody who saw the recording rather than here live had a question, and post as a comment, would you be available to answer that?
Absolutely. In fact, I'll be checking back in because I'm going to I didn't let my list know about this, but also let them know that there was a recording. I think it's great. I love that we're live, and I think people are just so used to waiting for the recording. But I will definitely check back in.
All right. So one thing we can do to make it easier for you to know when you have questions is right after we get finish this, if you can go to the video that's recorded now and post the first comment saying, please ask me your questions as a reply to this comment, because then you'll get notified by YouTube that there was a reply to your comment, so you'll know.
Great.
So you don't have to keep coming back going, has there been any new questions?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your wonderful work here. Well, not all of it, but such, but sharing your wonderful work here with all of us and opening people to these new possibilities, both in terms of how your work helping in the whole world and how they can do their own healing in a much more effective way.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. And we've known each other for quite a while, connected by our dear friend, Margaret Lynch. And it's a delight to be able to spend some quality time with you.
Yeah, thanks. Me too. All right. For everybody, the next interview is, look it up real quick, sorry, with Carol Look, another EFT, another person. Well, she's an EFT master. She's from the earliest days of EFT. And the topic of this interview is called Tapping into Emotional Abundance, How to Say Yes to What You Want. I look forward to seeing everybody there. And thank you so much, Lori. And look forward to talking to you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, beautiful. And blessings to Laura and the twins.
Yeah, thanks. They were upstairs. I could hear them during the call. All right, bye everybody. Keep tapping.